Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. This single sentence, found in Genesis 3:1, introduces one of the most pivotal and misunderstood figures in all of biblical history. Crafty, yes, but notice the stark absence of any descriptor like evil, demonic, or Satan. The original Hebrew text presents it merely as an animal, albeit a cunning one. This textual silence is far more profound than it first appears, creating a paradox that has shaped centuries of theological understanding. If the foundational narrative describes a mere creature, how did this crafty animal become universally identified as Satan, the cosmic embodiment of evil? That is the central investigative question we must now confront. The question, then, is not merely academic, but foundational to Western theology. How did the seemingly mundane serpent of Genesis evolve into the definitive arch-nemesis, Satan, across millennia of interpretation? To uncover this profound transformation, we must embark on a meticulous investigation, sifting through textual evidence, historical context, and the evolving theological landscape. Our journey will reveal layers of meaning added long after the original narratives were penned. But before we delve into the evidence that challenges conventional wisdom, let us first firmly establish what that conventional wisdom actually is. For countless generations, the identity of the serpent in Genesis has been unequivocally settled. It is Satan, the ultimate adversary, tempting Adam and Eve into humanity's original sin. This interpretation forms a fundamental pillar of traditional Christian theology, underpinning narratives of the cosmic battle between good and evil and the very need for redemption. Passages like Revelation 12:9 explicitly link the ancient serpent with the devil and Satan, solidifying this understanding for millions. This widely accepted view, however, is not a static truth. To truly comprehend its historical provenance, we must first transport ourselves to the ancient world where the Genesis narrative itself first took shape. The original context of the Eden narrative is found by immersing ourselves in the ancient Near East, the crucible of early Israelite thought. This was a world teeming with diverse cosmologies, where divine power often manifested as a complex interplay of forces, not always neatly divided into absolute good and evil. Many Mesopotamian and Canaanite myths, for instance, featured powerful, sometimes capricious deities or primordial chaos monsters. Adversarial figures were common, yet the idea of a singular, independent cosmic entity dedicated solely to evil, a true arch-nemesis to a supreme god, was not the predominant framework. Early Israelite monotheism, while revolutionary, also developed gradually. The concept of a fully formed Satan, a cosmic villain driving universal sin, was not yet central to their theological understanding when the Genesis account was originally compiled. This historical perspective, therefore, sets the stage for a critical realization that challenges everything we thought we knew about Eden's serpent. Despite centuries of fervent belief, the most startling discovery awaiting us is found in the very source text itself. When we meticulously examine the original Hebrew of Genesis, particularly chapter 3, an extraordinary omission comes into sharp focus. The text, in its pristine form, never names the serpent as Satan. It does not call it the devil, nor does it identify it as a fallen angel or any supernatural adversary. This isn't a subtle ambiguity. It's a stark, undeniable silence, a void where conventional wisdom expects a cosmic villain. This absence is not just curious. It is the critical juncture, the inciting incident that forces us to question the entire received narrative. To truly grasp the magnitude of this textual silence, we must now turn our attention directly to the Hebrew text of Genesis 3, dissecting its words and their implications. Our investigation begins then with the very word used in Genesis 3:1, nahash. This Hebrew term, in its most direct and ancient usage, refers quite simply to a literal snake or a mythical serpent figure. Crucially, the text itself offers no inherent connotation of a supernatural evil entity, a fallen angel, or the figure we now know as Satan. The narrative continues to treat it as an animal throughout the interaction. Consider the divine curse leveled in Genesis 3:14-15. The Lord God says, "Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly, and you will eat dust all the days of your life." This is a physical, zoological condemnation, not a cosmic banishment of an angelic being. The serpent is punished by altering its physical form and diet, condemning it to a life among the animals, not as a supreme adversary to God. This textual evidence, when examined without centuries of layered interpretation, presents a figure far less grand than Christian theology would later depict. This raises a crucial question for our journey. If the foundational text presents nahash as primarily an animal, how have scholars of ancient Hebrew and early Jewish thought grappled with its true identity? Delving into early Jewish scholarship, we find a striking consistency. Respected academics, like the renowned historian of religion Elaine Pagels, have meticulously traced how ancient Jewish interpretations, including those from thinkers like Philo of Alexandria in the 1st century CE and various rabbinic traditions, rarely, if ever, equated the Genesis serpent with Satan. For these early interpreters, the nahash was often seen as a potent symbol, perhaps representing human desire, the allure of temptation, or even a literal cunning creature. It was an adversary within the human experience, a catalyst for choice, but not the cosmic supervillain we recognize today. This distinction is vital, as it underscores that the elaborate theological framework of a singular, powerful entity dedicated to evil was still very much in development within Judaism when the Genesis narrative was composed and canonized. The serpent, in its original context, served a different narrative function. But if this is indeed the case, what are the profound implications for our understanding of the fall and the very nature of sin? Indeed, if the Genesis narrative, in its earliest form, portrays the serpent as merely a cunning animal rather than the cosmic adversary, Satan, this recontextualization fundamentally shifts the traditional understanding of the fall of humanity. It suggests the primary instigator of sin wasn't a supernatural embodiment of evil, but perhaps a more internal struggle with temptation, an inherent aspect of human choice. The weight of responsibility shifts. Is it a cosmic battle between divine forces and an archfiend, or a more intimate drama of human agency and consequence? This perspective forces us to confront how much of our accepted theological framework is built upon centuries of layered interpretation, rather than explicit textual declaration. However, the story of the serpent's identity takes a dramatic turn within later biblical writings, particularly in the New Testament, where the lines between the creature and the cosmic adversary begin to blur decisively. While Genesis provides us with a figure that is merely cunning, the theological void regarding the serpent's identity would not last. A powerful and explicit identification was still to come, centuries later within its pages. This is where the ancient serpent's transformation into the ultimate adversary truly solidifies. Indeed, the narrative takes a decisive turn. We move from the subtle implications of an allegorical creature to an unambiguous declaration. In the New Testament's book of Revelation, chapter 12, verse 9, we encounter a passage that leaves no room for ambiguity. It states, "The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray." Here, the connection is not merely implied, it is explicitly stated, directly linking the primal serpent of Eden to the devil and Satan. This single verse serves as a crucial theological anchor, retroactively redefining the character of the Genesis Nahash for generations to come. It establishes a clear cosmic antagonist where none was explicitly named before. This textual shift, however, wasn't accidental. It arose from specific theological needs and evolving spiritual concepts that demanded a definitive villain. Scholarship suggests this explicit identification was no accident. Instead, it was a profound theological necessity, emerging from the evolving religious landscape of Second Temple Judaism and early Christianity. During this period, particularly under the influence of Persian Zoroastrianism, the concept of cosmic dualism, a universe shaped by opposing forces of good and evil, gained increasing prominence. To explain the pervasive presence of suffering, temptation, and moral corruption in the world, a singular, powerful antagonist was required. The Genesis serpent, already a figure of cunning and deception, provided the perfect narrative anchor. It allowed theologians to retrospectively interpret the ancient story through a new lens, consolidating the scattered ideas of evil into one definitive cosmic villain, Satan. This interpretation served to unify a developing theological framework, offering a clear explanation for the origins of sin and the ongoing spiritual battle. However, this academic dissection of motive often stands in stark contrast to the deeply held theological conviction that the serpent was always intended to be Satan, regardless of explicit textual mention within Genesis. However, it is crucial to acknowledge the counterargument, deeply rooted in traditional Christian theology, that the Genesis author, even without explicit naming, implicitly intended the serpent to be Satan. From this perspective, later New Testament scriptures, particularly Revelation 12:9, do not introduce a new identity, but rather clarify what was always understood or divinely foreshadowed in the original text. This view posits a cohesive, unfolding divine narrative, where ambiguity in earlier texts is resolved by later, more explicit revelations. For many, this approach ensures the Bible's internal consistency and maintains the integrity of a cosmic struggle against evil, central to salvation history. It's an interpretive framework that prioritizes theological unity over a purely historical critical reading of individual passages. Yet the adoption and establishment of this interpretation as central doctrine was not merely a matter of theological synthesis. It was also shaped by the very human process of crafting the Christian canon and the powerful figures who influenced its formation. Indeed, this consolidation was a deliberate act of theological construction. As Christianity began to define its doctrines, these figures emerged to shape its understanding of core narratives. Early church fathers like Irenaeus in the 2nd century CE and later Augustine of Hippo in the 4th-5th century were instrumental. They didn't just interpret Genesis 3, they allegorized it, firmly identifying the cunning serpent with Satan. This wasn't merely academic exegesis, it was a foundational move, solidifying what we might call the serpent's doctrinal transformation. Through their influential writings and the decisions of early church councils, this interpretation became an unshakable cornerstone of Christian theology, deeply embedding the cosmic adversary into the very fabric of sin and redemption. This human agency, this conscious shaping of doctrine, reveals a profound journey. But to truly appreciate the full scope of this evolution, we must now synthesize all these disparate threads into a coherent narrative. So, what have we uncovered? The serpent's transformation was no sudden divine revelation, but a gradual, complex evolution meticulously constructed over centuries. We began with Genesis, where the nahash was simply a crafty animal, devoid of cosmic evil. Then we saw how later texts, like Revelation 12:9, explicitly identified it as the devil and Satan, driven by evolving theological needs and external influences like Zoroastrian dualism. Finally, we observed the pivotal role of figures like Irenaeus and Augustine, who solidified this interpretation into Christian doctrine. This journey reveals how ancient narratives are not static, but living texts upon which millennia of interpretive layers are built. But this raises a profound question. What if we peel back all those layers? The original Genesis account, then, could be primarily a story of human choice, temptation, and its inherent consequences, unburdened by the intervention of a cosmic supervillain? Consider how such a reading might fundamentally reshape our understanding of human responsibility, the nature of evil, and even the very concept of divine justice. It provokes us to question whether the ultimate source of temptation lies within the human heart itself, rather than an external, malevolent force. This thought experiment challenges us to reconsider foundational theological structures. But to fully grasp the weight of these implications, we must first consolidate our findings. So, what have we ultimately uncovered? Our meticulous textual and historical investigation reveals that the serpent in Genesis, the nahash, was initially presented as a crafty animal, an agent of temptation, without any explicit identification as a cosmic force of evil. It was centuries later, most notably in Revelation 12:9, that this ancient serpent was explicitly linked to the devil or Satan. This profound transformation, this serpent's doctrinal transformation, was not a singular event, but a complex evolutionary process shaped by shifting theological needs, external cultural influences, and the deliberate interpretations of influential church fathers. It underscores that biblical narratives are not static pronouncements, but living texts, continuously reinterpreted and layered with new meanings across millennia. The journey through the serpent's transformation reveals not a simple answer, but a profound and enduring complexity. The tension between literal interpretations, allegorical readings, and our historical critical findings persists, leaving us with a lingering question. How do these layered interpretations, built over millennia, continue to shape not just our understanding of ancient texts, but the very fabric of modern belief and ethics? The debate over the nahash is a potent microcosm for the ongoing challenge of biblical scholarship. The ultimate reconciliation of these narratives remains an intensely personal and intellectual undertaking. This journey through textual evolution and theological shaping inevitably leads to a crucial question for you, our discerning viewers. How does this deep dive into the serpent's doctrinal transformation alter your understanding of the Garden of Eden, or perhaps even challenge your perspectives on the very nature of evil itself? We invite you to share your insights, respectful interpretations, and further questions in the comments below. Your engagement fuels this ongoing investigation into biblical mysteries. And if you're ready to peel back even more layers of forgotten history, then join us. The journey into the serpent's doctrinal transformation is just one thread in the vast tapestry of biblical mysteries. The evolution of such powerful symbols compels us to look deeper into other foundational concepts. If the shifting identity of Eden's serpent has sparked your curiosity, then prepare to unravel another profound enigma. We invite you to continue this academic exploration with our next deep dive, The Forgotten Origins of Angels and Demons. This journey will further illuminate how ancient beliefs and texts shape the supernatural landscape we understand today. The pursuit of historical truth, after all, is an endless endeavor. After everything we've uncovered about the nahash's evolving interpretations, how do these shifting meanings still influence your understanding of evil today? Tell me in the comments. I read and reply to every single one. If the serpent's transformation shows how narratives are reshaped, our next video unravels the lost gospel of Judas. Subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss the truth. Like this if you understood what others missed, and share it with someone who needs to see it.